Hello. Today we're in Manhattan, and the project today is to preserve a faux bird's eye maple door. Instead of taking all of the finish off of this door, which is professionally done, we're going to just take off the loose areas that are caused by a loose frame. As you can see here, the frame is loose, so every time the door was closed, it would get loose and cause the paint to crack all the way down to the bottom. This door was painted about 15 years ago, and instead of taking the whole finish off, most of it is still in very good shape. And I'm going to show you how to do this without doing the entire finish over. Okay, so I'm using Bondo, which is a auto body 2-part epoxy resin filler, to fill all of the loose areas, the areas where the paint separated from the metal in the door. This is a hardener that gets mixed into the resin. Here we are, we're doing the last layer of this 2-part epoxy resin Bondo to get things smoothed out as much as possible before putting a prime coat on. We've done some sanding already, and now I'm finding these areas where things could be a bit smoother before we actually do the prime. Okay, so now that we have filled all of the areas where the loose paint was with the 2-part epoxy resin, the Bondo, and we did all the sanding to make it perfectly smooth, we see some areas where we sanded that expose the base color. So now that I know what the base color was that was used, I can mix a color. And what's great about this particular product is that it's designed specifically for metal and for undercoating. It's an alkyd. And what I did was I poured some into the bottom of my mixing container, and I added my own Mixol Orange number 18 and a little bit of Mixol Oxide type Castagny number 20. These are universal tints that will mix into just about any paint product, water-based, oil-based, alkyd-based, alcohol, etc. And so by mixing those two together, and then, oh yes, I did have to add a little bit of yellow as well to get it to the right color. We did this test and we found that, in fact, we've got a color that's so close for the base coat that we can now proceed with putting the base coat. Now, instead of leaving things all strokey, what I mean by that is where there are brush strokes in it, I'm going to use a stipple effect to sort of smooth things out. And then further in this little video, I'll show you how we're going to make this go to a nice smooth finish. It's easier to smooth this out if it's stippled than it is when it's stroked with a brush. Okay, so day 2. Welcome back. We now have a fully cured prime or base color coat, and we've sanded most of it to get it smooth and removed most of the dust. And I'm just going to show how this stippled material, this stippled paint is now going to be smoothed out with sandpaper so that we have a nice smooth finish. Because it's an alkyd base, it's a very hard paint when it's dry. which means that you can sand it pretty aggressively and get a nice smooth finish out of it. So once this whole process is done, the glaze will take to this very, very well. Okay, so now we're ready to start in with the glaze, and I have to get a matching glaze color to the original that was used on the door. Essentially what the glaze consists of is contractor's glaze from Polyvine. Great product. I get it at my local paint distributor. And these, again, universal tints, which I showed you earlier. A variety of these: Terra Brown, Umber, Dunkelbraun, and I mix these together with a little bit of orange and red to come up with this relatively close color. And we can try it to see where we're at with it. Don't panic if it goes on a bit dark at first, because in this process we're going to be removing some. The key thing is to make sure that you've covered all of the base color. And I'm using a flared brush like this because it allows me to do things like this. After that first step, I'm using another type of brush, which is just a very small graining brush. And with this brush, I'm going to refine what I've already done. See how I twist things around and let things be sort of random? And then I have a rag standing by so I can remove excess where it's not needed. Being careful not to impinge on the area that we primed. Third step. This is a brush that I found when I was traveling in China, and I love it. It's a very, very fine softener. And what we use this for is just very, very lightly brushing the surface to blend the materials in. Either stippling or stroking, a little bit of each. Thusly. And again, I'm going to try and reconcile this edge a little bit. Maybe add a little glaze around the edge later on. And a little bit of graining like that. So as you can see at this point, we've pretty much gotten the color combination correct, and the rest is really about brush stroke and technique. So if you're going to decide to do this on your very own, my recommendation would be not to be cheap about the brushes that you use. These are fine brushes. This one is made by Pierre Finkelstein, who is a very respected faux finisher out of New York. There are many different varieties that you can get, but it's about the bristle mainly. The best bristles are going to give you the best results. So the more you spend on a brush, the better the end result is going to be. It's pretty simple. Okay. So now we're just adding the dark accent colors here and there. Where's my, oh, here. Okay. So this is a combination of black and dark brown glaze. This right here. And I'm using two brushes. One to apply, just a few little specks here and there, and then the other to soften. This is the first coat of varnish, and once this is completely dry, we will put a second coat on for extra protection. So there you have it. This is the door in its finished state for most intents and purposes. And it looks just like new.